Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Recently, I had coffee with a friend of mine, 40-something guy, single, and he was sharing with me a series of dates that he had been on, series of dates with one particular woman that he was interested in. How he met her doesn't really matter. At any rate, he was going on about the over-the-top nature of this courtship. He likes her, and the flowers, dinners, whisking her off her feet, and I think she was in a prior relationship. Again, I don't know a ton of details, but she's not. I'm not saying she's not buying it. She's wanting to move slower than he is. A little apprehensive, I guess, would be a term for it. And we can speculate about whatever, and it doesn't really matter. That's not the point of this. This is this is not a dating podcast. This is a relationship podcast, and it's one and the same. I get it, but it's not. I'm not getting into her history. I don't know a whole lot about her history, and I don't really know everything that's going on. I just know that he really likes her, and he is, pulling all stops out to kind of win her over. And part of that, and she's kind of apprehensive, and part of that, he is trying to convince her that, hey, this is who I am. The flowers, the over the top, the notes, whatever it is, all these little things, and I won't get into all of it, that's who he is, and that's who he always will be. And so we're kind of I'm going through this conversation. I'm just listening to him talk, and we're just catching up. At one point, as he was talking about this and his frustration in trying to convince her, I told him, I said, put your arms out straight. Put them out at your side straight. If you will, your body forms a T. I know this is an audio podcast. Put your arms out straight. I'm doing it right now. You just hold them out there straight. It's really not that hard. It's not a hard thing to do, to hold your arms out straight. But as time goes on, it gets harder. It's easy to do it for 30 seconds. I remember when I was a kid off at camp, this is what they would have you do. If you got in trouble, you would have to stand at the foot of your bed, perfectly standing up straight, head tall, and hold your arms out at your side for 2 minutes or something like that. And you kind of chuckled at it. Oh, that's no big deal. But, 20 seconds in, it's not a big deal. 30 seconds in, it's not a big deal. 40 seconds, they're starting to get a little bit heavy. A minute, yeah. A minute 15, oh my gosh, this is a chore. A minute and a half, oh please, can I put him down? And it goes on and on and on, and eventually you hit 2 minutes, and you're just like, oh my God, thank God. I will never do that again, and it became a very successful deterrent. But holding your arms out at your side initially is easy to do. You can just consciously say, okay, I'm going to do this. They're relatively light. I'm going to be fine. But as time goes on, it becomes more and more difficult to hold them out there, and it becomes more of a chore. And you have to really be conscious about keeping them out there and keeping them straight. Back to the camp situation, the counselor yelling, up, get them back up there straight. They got to be straight. They're kind of lagging down. Now, what does that have to do with the relationships, and what does that have to do with this particular friend of mine who was trying to win this person over? Is that relationships are sort of the same thing. Relationships. A good relationship, what goes into a good relationship is easy. It's very easy. Executing on that easy over time is difficult. It becomes difficult. I have been married 28 and a half years, I guess, at this point. July 2nd, so, whatever. You do the math. It's over 28 years. And, early on, I don't know that I was as over the top as this particular person. I really liked my wife, and I assume she liked me. And we dated for 3 years and then got married, and so here we are 31 years later, and we're still together. And it's I don't want to say it's a challenge. She's great, and I can go on and on about her, and she wouldn't be happy if I did. But anyhow, she's great, and it's a good marriage. No marriage is perfect. I'm sure there are times where she would just like to just put a pillow over my head in my sleep and have me never wake up. I exaggerate, but there's a saying out there: familiarity breeds contempt, and it's just you you get enough of one another. It's like, hey, I need a break. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and we're talking about saying "I love you" when your partner first says, "Hey, I love you." It's just like it's this euphoric thing, and then as time goes on, you get 20, 25 years in the relationship, maybe not even that far along, and "I love you" turns into "love you," which is just, hey, a quick way of saying goodbye in the morning, and or as you hang up the phone, and there's not necessarily a lot of there's not the same meaning is not there, and it's not received the same either. Doesn't mean that you still don't love the person. Um, you may love them more than you ever did, but it just sort of changed. It's changed over time. It's called the hedonic principle. That basically our level of satisfaction of a situation kind of levels out in time. And so it's the same thing with relationships. And in relationships, we start to, when you maybe head over heels for somebody, and always be head over heels for them, but in time it starts to, I don't want to say become old, but it certainly becomes routine. Um, and so when this person's telling me, hey, listen, this is how I will always be. I will always be this doting boyfriend and turn into the doting fiance and then the doting husband. I know that I'm not saying it's impossible. I know it's very, very difficult, bordering on impossible. It's a difficult thing to do, much like holding your arms out at your side. And is there a solution to it? And this is true of any relationship. This is not just personal relationships. These are business relationships too. Relationships sort of hit a snag, or they get sort of routine after a while, and there's some tension in them. I have some great professional friends, and there are tensions. I have franchisees, and there are tensions. A lot of they're all great people, and there's a lot of great things happening, great interactions, but from time to time there are tensions. Part of it's on me, part of it may be on them. Depending upon my mood, what's being asked of me, what's going on around me, but it's not easy to keep that new romance feeling in any relationships, whether it's personal or professional, going. It's just they tend to get routine over time. So I don't know that there is really no way to know there is no way to get the routine out of it. It's going to happen. And in reality, you kind of want that. You kind of want okay, I don't always have to put my best foot forward. They can see they can see a darker side of me. Maybe not a dark side of you, but they can see whatever. When your shoes are off, your feet stink, or whatever it is. Or that in the professional setting, that you have bad days, that you get stressed, and when you're stressed, you're not quite as happy-go-lucky. So I think the solution to it is just recognizing that it is the way it is. For example, this guy, he just needs to recognize that he's not going to win her over in 2 or 3 dates, putting his very, 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 very best foot forward, hoping that he's going to be able to keep that up, because the reality he's not going to be able to. What he just needs to recognize is that I need to put I need to put my average foot forward. I need to put forward who I am, and maybe not all the warts, but this is typically what I'm about. And if you like that, if you're okay with that, then we can kind of continue. But if you don't like the average, don't fall in love with the above average is really what it boils down to. Because in time, kind of like water finds its own level, eventually in time we find, human personalities find their own level, if you will. And so I think the best way is just to acknowledge that relationships are difficult. And when you acknowledge that, well, it reminds me of the opening line in the book, The Road Less Traveled. The opening line is life is difficult, and then it just goes on to explain that once you accept that life is difficult, it no longer becomes difficult because you realize that this is just life. And it's the same thing with relationships. Relationships are a challenge. They are difficult. And accept that. And if you accept that, then you're coming in with a different expectation. If you come into a relationship and think it's always going to be great, you're going to be disappointed. But if you come into that relationship, personal or professional, and just know that people have their quirks. You have your quirks. I have my quirks. They're going to come out eventually. And so you need to come into a relationship realizing that, people aren't perfect, and you have to be willing, if it's going to be a long-term relationship, personal or professional, you have to be willing to work through those little quirks, if you will. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's a bad relationship if it doesn't stay at that high level. It was never there to begin with, I guess, is what it really boils down to. So the antidote to really any relationship, or not antidote, but the best way to approach any relationship is just to acknowledge, verbally or certainly internally, that okay, this is great, this is a good person, this is a good client, or this is a good vendor, or whatever it is, but this is not going to be perfect. And that's the best way to deal with it. And I see that in my own world. I see it with the franchisees. For the most part, we get along great. They're great people. You know what? I've got my quirks they have to deal with. They have their quirks I have to deal with. I see it with vendors. I have people that I work with on an ongoing basis. My payroll processing people. It's an outside vendor, my IT people, my website person. It just goes on. And for the most part, they're really good relationships. But there are little quirks that you need to work through, and you need to recognize that it's part of the deal. It's part of the deal to have these little quirks rear their head from time to time. So if you think relationships are easy, stand up at the foot of your bed, put your arms out, head tall, arms out, make a T, and hold them there. You're big boys and big girls. Go for 5 minutes, and if you can do that, more power to you. Chances are those arms are going to get really, really heavy. And by the same token, the same thing with relationships. So just think about that as you move about your day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.